Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Cicero Planning Board meeting. Would you please stand and join us in the pledge? Mr. Duval, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First order of business is the approval of the July 19th meetings. Any questions or comments? Since there were only two of us here that were present, I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second it.
They can still vote for it, can't they?
I think so. We get 3 abstains because we weren't there.
Or you can vote for it, assuming you read through the minutes and. Right? Mr. Duval,
Yes.
Mr. Abbey,
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Mr. Snyder,
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Mr. Bloss.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Minutes have been approved. Now we'll open the meeting to public comment. Is there anybody here that would like to address the board on any active application? Given nobody's approach, we'll close the public input and move on to the first agenda item. This is a site plan review for a proposed Dollar General at 6054 East Taft Road. The applicant here, please come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. Since we last saw each other, we've made some improvements to our plan based upon some comments we received initially. And I think you're in receipt of the most latest and greatest. If you'd like, I can walk you through it again, since it's been a little further detailed.
Please, it's been a while too, so.
Sure. So I am Jim Toft. I'm with Griffiths Engineering out of Binghamton. We are the engineer working for the developer, which is Capital Growth Buchalter, Victor Mickle, our developers in the back. So we all work under the Dollar General umbrella. We're kind of under Capital Growth. And the way Dollar General works is they have certain regions and developers for each region. So right now we're doing a lot of Northern New York stuff with Capital Growth. And again, we all work under Dollar General to get these sites through the planning process and constructed. What you see here is based upon a search ring analysis where Dollar General gave the developer a search ring of 11 herbs and spices, all these secret recipes they have for success. And that includes traffic counts, neighborhoods. They're not necessarily relying upon being a destination. They're more so want to tap the actual traffic that's here and the population that's here now. You know, they're not your Walmart where people are going to go across town. Dollar General, obviously, many have been to them. You don't go fill up a grocery cart typically and leave and shop for an hour. You go in and get that poster board for your kid's project you just found out about at 9 o'clock at night. And those are the types of things. That's why they locate in neighborhoods. They serve the kind of almost the general store type approach that we had years ago before all the big boxes came in. So it's kind of shifting the other way a little bit. And the Dollar General obviously has a lot of merchandise, groceries, refrigerated and frozen product. If you weren't aware already.
Thank you.
So if you don't mind,
Please.
Maybe to walk you through this.
Yes.
One thing Dollar General has, along with our developer, is a scientific approach to parking. If you've ever been to a Dollar General, you probably have never had trouble finding a parking spot. Most of the customers park right in front of the main entrance, and that can vary with stores. Ours is right, as you can see it, right in front of those accessible parking spaces. This parking on the upper right-hand side is typically used by employees and overflow customer parking. The hatched area up in the top right corner is a concrete pad where deliveries happen. Typically, a truck will come in, it'll make all the movements on site. We have, as we page through these documents, you'll see the auto turn movements, which is a computer simulation, which is very conservative. It basically takes the lowest common denominator truck driver with keeping in full motion all the time. There's not stopping and starting. And it shows you can get in and back into that space without backing up on the county road or inhibiting traffic out on the main line. So yeah, this 35 parking spaces is typical for Dollar General. You guys have a different parking requirement, not specific, but we'll go into communities that are telling us to build 70 parking spaces. And we'll say, trust us, we do not need all those. We can commit to those if you want for future. But the model and all the data shows that 35 parking spaces is even more than what's happening on the holiday season on peak Saturday. Again, if you ever find yourself looking for parking at a Dollar General, that's probably not the case. So obviously we have 35 spaces. We have 2 accessible parking spaces with a shared access aisle right in the front of the building. That is a flush connection into the store through a flush sidewalk. As you move away from those entrances, the sidewalk becomes a 6-inch reveal, protecting the building or pedestrians from, a slow errant traffic vehicle that's just kind of rolls up too far. So we do offer that type of protection around the building. If you wouldn't mind moving ahead with the slides. Yeah, so this is the simulation I was talking about. Each one of those lines represents a wheel of the vehicle and its turning movement. And what they use a 53-foot trailer. I think it's a WB67, which is the largest vehicle you're going to see on site, and typically one of the largest vehicles you see on the highway, unless it's a tandem or something else. But that is their typical Dollar General delivery vehicle. There'll be other box trucks and smaller vehicles delivering soda, chips, and some of the regular groceries that they get in there. So we do show all those movements on site, and the county will look at this as well because they don't want any trucks backing up on our county road. And they will also they've been working with us. There's different phases of approval for their permits. So we're well on our way. We've been approved with what we have right now. And I think the final approval for the county is when we get a contractor on board, for the contractor's information to be submitted, insurance and all that sort of thing. But, that's separate from here, but, obviously be contingent upon your approval that the county is fine with our entrance. The other items that I want to talk about is utilities. All utilities are ready and available. That's why this is a prime site for Dollar General, water, sewer, electricity, and all of it's coming into the site underground. We're going to bring our electricity underground to this, looks like the south part of the site along the property line. And then we're going to, it's going to go up to a pole where it goes into the building. So it's out of the public site. One thing to note, you'll see on the top of the page, you'll see a line connecting to a little square. That is a catch basin that's collecting off-site flows. So flows that are not even coming onto our site, we're capturing them and bringing them through and around the site so we don't have to treat essentially clean stormwater. And that's also happening to the rear of the parcel where you see the swale shaped along the back of the store. Again, we're taking off-site flows, running it around the site, especially during construction, because we don't want to treat clean stormwater. We don't want to introduce it to the site and have to treat it. So we're bringing that to the low point of the site, which is where all your stormwater goes now. The idea is we want to match the existing flows for pre-development. So with our post-development flows, right down to the actual flow rate, if not less. The site flows we capture through a stormwater system, collection system, and it goes into the almost looks like a running track pond right along the highway there, where it's treated and it has infiltration and a collection pipe at the base along with an overflow. And then after it's treated, it enters back into the storm system that runs through and around the site. So that's part of our stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is a state DEC requirement. As you know, we're in the process of getting the speedies permit related to that. And I believe your engineer has examined our SWIP, our stormwater pollution prevention plan for that, as well as I think the MS4 here. And moving ahead, there's a little cleaned up version of our site. This is our soil and erosion controls for the site. You see those large lines up in the swale up top. Those are check dams, basically to slow the stormwater, let some of the sediment fall out before it's collected and introduced back into the the existing storm drainage paths. This version here shows, oh, you can jump around, that's fine. Yeah. So this shows the different media that goes into some of the site, stormwater included. Obviously that little track we talked about, it shows the different soils that are within that treatment chamber. I call it a pond, but it's meant to be dry most of the time. It infiltrates, it collects through an under drain and exits the site. So this is attempting to show some of the different greenery and landscape that occurs. Since we last met, we had a request to obviously have more regional plantings, not something that thrives in Texas or Florida, something that we're used to seeing here. So the typical plantings you see here, as they're listed, they are native species to the area. If not native, they're ones that actually grow here and are typical. The sheet you just backed over, previous sheet shows a lot of hatching, and that's basically shows lawn and rehabilitation. So that if you wanted to back up one. Yeah, so this just shows where we're planting lawn, where we have certain soils for stormwater infiltration, and you see the various surfaces. The darker parking lot surface, that's heavy duty paving. That's probably thicker in pavement thickness than any road in the county. It is a pretty beefy section. And where the parking is, it's a little thinner because there's not as much movements as well as large heavy loads. And so that is the difference in the parking surfaces. And they're all in the back of the plan set where it shows you the details for the various types of pavements and details. If you wouldn't mind jumping ahead. One more, and these are our stormwater, typical stormwater controls. Those are DEC details that just popped up. Let's see. Can you go back one more back, one more. And we're almost there. One more. Yeah. So these are our typical stormwater erosion control details. They are part of our SWIP, or stormwater pollution prevention plan. They will be approved by DEC. They're DEC's typical details, as you can see. We're not doing anything out of the ordinary. They're all passive stormwater devices, nothing that's going to have any special equipment needed to maintain or anything like that. So we can advance to the next slide. Again, more of our detailing. There's your asphalt paving sections up there, as I spoke about before, and some of your utility details, curb details, our water connection, which will meet your requirements for connection, and sanitary clean out detail there. Again, they're not really planning items, but they're important that you guys take a peek at them. Of course, our signage, we expect to meet the signage requirements through the Dollar General branding. And there's a display of some of our accessible parking signs. And obviously, when you have an access aisle, you have a no parking sign as well. And just shows the installation of those. And the signs right in front of the building are installed in concrete bollards with a decorative cover. So no one can breach that flush surface, where we don't have the curb, where we have it flush. And this is some of the elements we use around the site. I show our accessible parking and access aisle that meets all the requirements for ADA. The dumpster enclosure, which is basically a privacy fence type setup that wraps around 3 sides of the dumpster. And I don't think it's in the front, or there's no gate, but it does screen the dumpster itself. And then we have our lighting to our lower right. Lighting to our lower right, which shows the poles. I can't read. I know we'll talk about the lighting in a moment, because we did change some pole heights to give you the proper lighting. But the detail on the left shows the dock doors where the trucks are unloaded. It's not a dock per se, where it's like 4 feet off the ground. It's a flush dock with a ramp. They will dolly the product in and out. And the other door is just an employee entrance. We're going to take a look at the floor plan in a second. I'll show you the division of the store as far as storage versus retail space. as we walk through these next ones. Yeah, some of our landscaping. Trying to see what you're looking at. And septic. Yeah, I can probably see those as good as everyone else, but typical site details. And so if we look at our rendering, this is the front of the store that is visible from the roadside. As you can see, we show attempt to render some of the parking spaces. Not exactly how it will be, because you'll see a little more reveal on the curb and such. But yeah, the building will be protected from vehicles. You'll have an accessible pathway into the store. You'll see a little sample of some of the lighting that's on the building mounted side. So this side is the east side. This is the delivery side where the truck pulls up along. Not too spectacular, but it's you'll see the landscape plan. You're not just looking at the building. It's broken up with some landscaping and such. And this is the rear south side. Again, similar. We're going to try to landscape that, so you're not looking at just the panels of the building. And again, this is the left side, where it's a little more decorative with some brick on the bottom and our panels on top. If you were to zoom in up to the building facade materials, maybe even on that first sheet, Mark, or whoever's running this, it gives you some detailed materials that, where they're three-dimensional. They're not just plain flat walls. We do use some materials that give it a little upscale look. The split face brick, the hardy plank siding, and the warm stone split face, and these various textures to break up the elevation of the building, which is pretty typical to Dollar General. It's kind of their brand and their style. I believe if you move ahead in the plan set, you'll get to hopefully a floor plan, and I could kind of show you what's going on there. It's important when you're in site planning to understand how the interior flows with the exterior. There you go. Obviously, most of you've been in a Dollar General or a similar store. Front entry where your registers and your checkout areas are. There's some offices and a convenience bathroom for customers and employees. And they do have some end caps and racks of candy and goodies they try to sell you on your way out, of course. And around the perimeter, you have shelving on one side, and others, there's our freezer and refrigerated sections. Yeah, and there's seasonal aisles, which will carry, holiday stuff at certain times of the year, spring cleanup stuff, time of the year, planting stuff. Very typical of Dollar General. But the rear of the building, you can see it's a storage area, and that what leads us to the dock. So that's off limits to customers. But obviously there was an emergency. Every door would be accessible via code to exit the building. I don't know. Are you guys in receipt of our lighting plan on your drive there?
Mark, you have reviewed it, right?
I have.
So I think we updated some things for you to get the foot candles, especially around the perimeter, so we're not spilling light over. But yeah, I believe you guys have looked at it. I think it met your expectations. At this point, if you guys had any particular questions, we can hone in on the exact drawing, or I can explain, or our developer can share operational information with the business. So as far as the lighting goes, the lights go off a half hour after the last employee leaves the building. That's a protocol, a timer, and all that. So the only lights you'll see is some low level security lighting, so that if law enforcement was driving there, they can see that there's nobody trying to get into the building. But the main lights will all dim at the close of the store.
We'll open up to questions, Mr. Duval.
Just two signs, one on the building and one at the roadside.
That is correct, as we have it in the application there.
Good. Mr. Abbey?
Just had a couple of things to refresh my memory. You got on the signs, are they lit signs or not?
Yeah, so Victor, did you want to speak with the other? Yeah. The lighting of the signs.
When the floor is open, and then they turn off with the parking lights when they turn off.
Okay, on the building and the freestanding?
Correct.
Okay, and how many employees are normally on?
2 to 3 at all time. 2 to 3.
And the hours are
They're,
normally,
they're typically 7 to 10, but you know, after they open a little bit, they kind of could tweak it, depends on the local need.
okay,
Most expect it to be 8 rather than 7,
and
but they will
5,
decide that
6.
after they open a little bit.
how many days a week?
7 days a week.
Oh, all 7?
Yes.
And I believe that 7 o'clock hour is when they get their deliveries.
I said,
So someone's gonna be there, and I think certain stores will decide to open at that time. Other
Mhm.
stores will make their core hours within that
Shift it a
time frame.
little bit, yeah.
Victor stated what works best, on the traffic flows and.
sure.
It is marked 8 to 10 on the plans.
Yeah, so that would be what they have studied for the local area. That would be the average.
And to do with the trash, you say they're boarded on 3 sides.
Yeah.
What type of materials do you normally use for
It's
that?
not privacy fence material. You guys can pull that
Yeah,
up.
there's a
too.
detail of it. It's a privacy fence. I think it's 6 foot high.
Is it vinyl or is
Yeah,
it
you can zoom in.
Wait.
It's a-
wood? We normally like to see vinyl if possible. And it stays nice and clean for many, many years.
Wood or vinyl?
Wood.
It says wood, we typically require
Okay.
vinyl.
We love vinyl.
Yeah, I don't think that's a big deal. I just think,
No, not really.
so you like a white vinyl, you don't care on the color, or
No, your
Uh,
choice.
something within the color scheme of the brand,
Sure.
the brown or.
As long as the vinyl is, it stays nice for many, many years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Snyder,
I love, basically the whole project. You did a pretty good job with layout, like, landscaping stuff, but it's still a big freaking gray box. And I believe I was quoted many weeks ago. I have little brain problems every once in a while, so maybe I didn't, but I believe I said that you ought to go look at the storage building that the fire department built in Brewerton, and you'll see how they took what was a box and made it look like maybe it belongs with the neighborhood. You attempted to do that with your 2 fake windows in the front. But it's also interesting that when we go in the building, there are no windows. So that's sort of depressing. I mean, skylight or 2 would probably be nice. But I certainly don't like to see the way it looks from the outside right now.
Right. I think the first attempt for us is to employ landscaping to break up that facade, and I hear you. And I think I'll leave it to Victor. Initially,
Yeah.
Dollar General comes down with the plan, and based upon,
Yeah, they don't really have windows or skylighting in any of them. We do add those, decorative to kind of break it like you mentioned. We could potentially ask if they could add more on the longer side.
Well, we basically don't care much about what the particular company likes to have as their thing. We like our community
Correct.
to look like it's a community, and therefore we don't like gray boxes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We can, the front windows, we can try to duplicate those on the long side facing that parking.
we're gonna want to see
It
some
won't be
architectural,
open to
we're gonna
the
want to see some
inside.
architectural change.
Say that again?
We're gonna want to see some architectural change.
Okay.
That's all I've got.
I'm all set.
are you specifically talking along the parking side? The other side, typically, I believe we have keeping some vegetation in place, and we're augmenting that.
Yeah, it's tucked in the back.
The views that are important to the public, I'd say, where we would concentrate unless you had other requests.
Well, I think either way you go on Taft Road, you're gonna see a big, long wall. It's a big old gray wall, whether you're going east or west.
The town's currently going through a comprehensive plan review, and one of the things that has come out of that is that we want to work on architectural appearance of structures. We're not looking for this anymore. And so, you know, my suggestion is go back, work with what we're telling you and come up with some changes. Okay.
So it's just there.
You're good.
I think we're all set now. The fire department had some comments relative to
But yes, we,
the hydrant and
yeah, I think the last time I was here, there was some conversation with the fire, one of the fire representatives, and since then we've installed a hydrant, and I believe all of our, we come within 150 feet of the building. Through, I think, all of the perimeter.
They've addressed all the concerns with relative to.
I thought. so.
Fire
Just wanted to make
department.
that part of the record. That's all I have, Steve. Anything
All set.
additional?
Also, thank you.
Yeah. Mark?
So, could we ask for a, like, administrative look at the, a new elevation? Or do we need to come back?
You're gonna have to come back to the board.
Okay. Is there anything outstanding besides that, that you guys are looking for?
Sounds like no. Sounds like
Okay.
we're good. You
Great.
know, you're gonna want to make the change on the fence around the dumpster.
Right.
And the architectural look.
And you guys serve as lead agency for seeker, so that'll occur at that time as well.
Correct.
And did you guys have any question on the EAF at this time, or? You guys were pretty good. Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Good
you.
night. The next item on the agenda, this is for a zone change recommendation from the planning board to the town board. This is for a commercial solar farm, and it's the property at 5728 Crabtree Lane. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Dan Huntington. I am the senior developer for BW Solar. I handle all the projects in New York State, along with my colleague Hamza, who's here as well. I live in Rochester. He lives in Albany. Between the two of us, we split the state with our community solar projects and large scale utility projects. The project we have before you sits currently on an 88-acre parcel. It has two different zones currently. The front portion of it, which you see at the northern side, is actually residential, and the remainder of the property is agricultural. We've been working on this project for about 2 years now. We've incorporated a handful of different changes. Initially, we had tried to situate two different solar projects on this parcel. Through our studies with the utility and also through our wetland delineation with our engineers, Fisher Associates, we came to the realization that that wasn't really feasible. What you'll see on this property and what we've submitted with our site plan shows that there's actually a very large DEC wetland on this property. And with that comes a 100-foot buffer as to where we cannot build within that area. So we originally had a small array to the left on the finger sticking out. We found through our studies with the utility that that was not financially feasible. Having read through a lot of the meeting minutes of some of the other projects, I know that there are concerns in this town about overburdening some of the neighbors and how many projects of solar you're actually having coming to the town. I did prepare a small little PowerPoint presentation that also addresses some of those concerns. But right now, the project we have is 3.2 megawatts. It sits on roughly 17.7 acres of land. And what we're asking of the town board with the zoning change, we know that that was a new provision that came in January. And we're asking for specifically the footprint that we're going to use, which you see there in red, to be converted in the very front where the access road is from residential to commercial, and then the larger portion of the actual array footprint from agricultural to commercial to facilitate the solar field. All the rest of the land will stay in its current zoning status. And in my conversations with the landowner, his intention is to use the land lease funds to continue to farm the other areas. What he's told me in the past in our conversations is that it's just been too expensive to farm currently with what is out there for him to use. So his hope is that by subletting some of this to us, he'll be able to farm the other areas that are still there. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know we did already submit the request for zoning change to the board, and they took lead agency, sent us to you guys for recommendations. We did submit our full EAF along with a project narrative. I don't believe our full SWIP was sent to you guys, along with we did visual simulations. We have a full wetland delineation. We already did a geotechnical study. So we're excited that the soils and composition here allow us to do pounded post. So the actual long-term, what you would consider permanent structures on this site are actually only the concrete pads that house the collection instruments. So all of the racking systems we'll be using on this project are pounded in without any concrete or any supplemental materials to hold them in. We'll be able to pound them to a depth of roughly 10 to 15 feet. At the end of the life cycle of this project, we will submit a decommissioning plan to the town, which will include a bond that we will sign with the town. And if for any reason the project does have to be removed, we can bring that back to its original state, following the ag and markets guidelines to bring it back into agricultural production, if that is something that happens at the end of the project.
Okay, well, you're all set?
Yeah, and if I
Open the
could,
questions?
real quickly, there was a PowerPoint I submitted. If I could
Sure.
just go through that real quick, it's only a couple slides. The light green one there.
While he's doing that, I have a question.
Sure.
We had another project in front of us and they were actually utilizing wetland. What determines whether or not you can?
So it's a great question. There's two jurisdictions when it comes to wetland. One goes to the Army Corps of Engineers, and that allows you to build in certain areas. You could do the pounded post in an Army Corps jurisdiction. Typically, if the wetland is over 12 acres, it goes to the DEC jurisdiction. That's actually changing in the coming years, coming months to a year. They're going to reduce the size from 12 to 7 acres and change. When the DEC has jurisdiction, you can't build in any of it, and there's a 100-foot buffer that goes around it.
So the DEC.
So yes, so this is large enough that it goes to the DEC, and that applies the 100-foot buffer, and you cannot build in it. There are rare circumstances where you can pay on a per acre basis to mitigate that if you do want to build in a DEC wetland. It's very difficult and very expensive. Army Corps of Engineer permits are a little bit looser. You can't use fill, so you can't put concrete around your posts. There are very strict guidelines as to what happens if you do dig a ditch, how you actually handle the soil and material, how do you keep it on site, make sure there's no contamination. So two different types of wetlands. Army Corps of Engineers, looser regulations, DEC, very difficult, most likely stay right away from that.
Thank you. Just curious question.
Yeah. We do it all the time. So real quick, I just wanted to present a few quick slides. Having read through all the meeting minutes over the last, say, 2 years, knowing that you have, already 2 projects approved, you have 2 others, another one and ourselves, hoping to come into town and operate here. I just wanted to address some of the comments and questions that I saw come up in previous board meetings, and use the old, I know you're going through a comprehensive plan, but use the old zoning map as kind of a reference guide here to start out. They're a little bit hard to see, but I put yellow stars as to where you have the 3 projects now. Well, the 2 projects that are actually approved and the 2 that are being proposed. Ours is indicated. Perfect. I actually went to the store to try and buy a laser pointer before. I couldn't
Here's one
find it.
right here for you.
Oh, excellent. Yes, so right up here, you'll see the 2 stars. This project here is already approved. This one's being proposed. Similarly, this project is already approved, and ours is down here where you see the yellow arrow. Again, commercial zoning is what the focus is. I understand in this process, your land is your portfolio. You want to make sure it's diverse. You want to make sure it's used properly. You want to be focused on the future. You guys have a large manufacturing facility coming in with Micron. You want to make sure that there's opportunities for growth. Completely understand that. And we want to make sure that we're not operating in a way that doesn't fit within that plan. So if you could go to the next slide, please. This again is the southern portion. Again, you can see right down here, this is the parcel we're dealing with. And if you'd like to go to the next slide. This is the array. What you'll see is everything in green with a slight green around it. That is actually the wetlands. We had to go a little smaller than we initially planned. We had submitted to the utility a 5 megawatt array. They came back to us and said that that actually was not feasible on the infrastructure, that we had to reduce it to 3.2 or almost 3.3 due to a flicker issue, because there are other projects on the power lines that we are trying to connect to. Those power lines are 13.5 or 13.2 lines that really can only hold about 75% of that. So reasonably, you can get 9 to 10 megawatts on one of those lines on a 13.2 or 13.5 before you hit a threshold that starts making it financially unviable to connect. You start paying for a lot of upgrades to their infrastructure. And I can tell you that gets very expensive very quickly. So this is the general footprint that we're looking for. Our landowner actually lives right here. And we would be coming in off of this road here, connecting to the lines that run along here. We would have a gate up in this area. There will be some poles, which you'll see in a visual simulation earlier or later on. All of this will be fenced in this area. We'll be using the natural screening buffers. There is a heavy tree area in through here, very old growth, heavy trees along here. This side is set back, obviously very far from the road, and there is natural screening buffers over here as well that will most likely house crops in the future. If you can go to our next slide. This is depicting the entire property. As I mentioned earlier, very heavily covered in wetlands. Everything with the slight green tint is wetlands. We have to stay outside of that along with a 100-foot buffer. So you'll see the purple dotted line in here. This was the area that we had for operational area. We had to stay within that and design within it. You'll see that there are 3 stars, one at the entrance, one over here to the east, and then one to the west. These are going to represent the visuals that we had generated for the project. So this is a mock-up of the entrance. Typically, there are 5 to 6 poles for every interconnection. The first 5 are owned by the utility. They are mandated by National Grid or RG&E, NYSEG as part of the infrastructure needed to connect this project. The very last one houses our metering hardware. After that, everything goes underground until it gets to the actual collection facility inside the fence. This road will be a gravel road. Again, our focus with this is everything is potentially removable. So the most permanent structures you're going to see on this project are the concrete pads, again, for the collection instruments, and then the fencing. That's pretty much the only time you're going to see concrete being poured is for fence posts and the actual pad mounted system. The road, again, gravel. If for whatever reason we have to bring this site back to its original state, we will be able to take everything off and return it back to farmland. Next slide, please. This is a depiction from the road to the west. As we mentioned, we originally tried to use this field for a second solar array. Once we put in the study with the utility, we found that it was not feasible. Also, the wetlands broke this project up in a way that it just wasn't a good design to have 2 pockets that you couldn't connect. So we decided not to go forward with that piece. Ideally, that will be farmed in the future with corn or some other type of crop, which will create a natural buffer. I believe the setback there is north of 1,000 feet.
That taken from Watt Road?
I believe so. Yep. And I know that it's hard to see, but if you do zoom in on the picture, you'll be able to see that there are panels digitally imposed on that picture. This is from the east. This is from the neighborhood just to our east. There are natural screening buffers with the trees. We do plan on reaching out to the neighbors if we do get the zoning variance to just confirm with them if they have any concerns about their view. If they do, we'll work with the landscape architect to make sure that we plant something that is native to the area that they feel comfortable with, that will provide some covering during leaf off season as well, usually some pines or something to that nature. The benefit of this project that I really like is any type of visual impact from a neighbor is towards the northern half. The panels will be facing south. They'll actually be trackers, so they'll be moving with the sun. So we can do a lot of extra things to the north, northeast, northwest as well, because it's not going to impede its ability to generate power. Usually where we have issues with screening is to the southern end of it, where if you plant anything that grows too large, it's going to cast a shadow. I do know one of the concerns was how quickly those trees will grow into maturity and actually provide screening. So we could, work to find not saplings, but something a little bit further along so that, you're not looking at a 5-year growth where it's actually going to serve its purpose. Hopefully within a year or two, it'll grow up enough that it mitigates any screening or visuals that would be there. But again, very few homes. I believe this house and the one to the left are the two closest, and there is a very large hedgerow already there naturally. So the next slide, again, as I mentioned, we had originally submit for a 5 megawatt project. We were told by the utility that we had to bring it down in size. So that's how we got to the 3.25 kVA size. Again, working on a 30.2 kV feeder and going to the Pine Grove substation. And I just want to touch on this real quick on this next slide, next 2 slides. So I included 2 links. These are publicly available resources that the utilities provide. The top link is actually a map, which we're going to show on the next slide, and shows what the hosting capacity is. That is a tool that all solar companies use to figure out where they can operate, right? So we're looking to see what lines have capacity available, and can we submit an application to take up that capacity? And also, are there any landowners in that vicinity that are willing to partner with us? So we find a line, we go out, we try to find a landowner who wants to have solar hosted on their land or has enough land for it. At the time, initially, there was no zoning change requirement. Typically in New York State, I stay away from zoning changes because they are difficult and they're subjective of the town board. There's not a lot of requirements that, if we meet them, you have to grant it. It's based on your desire to have that change. So I typically avoid zoning changes, but obviously this happened halfway through the development, so we're addressing it now. The second link that you see there is actually the SIR inventory. So that basically lists every project that is trying to come online. One thing I will say is looking at your map, the town of Cicero, and all the infrastructure that you have. There are a lot more applications than your board has most likely seen. And what that means is companies like myself put in several applications for a specific circuit or substation. And based on the report you get back on its financial feasibility, you determine whether or not to move forward. So on the next slide here, you'll see that there are roughly 5 substations working in and around your city. The 2 main ones are obviously up here, Bartell, that has a project directly next to it. And then you have the proposed project right across the street. Down here, this is the other project that was approved that also goes to Bartell. The other main substation is right down here, Pine Grove. That is where our project is going. And on this map, you can actually click on different circuits and you can see where those circuits go. So our project is right here. And when you click on the circuit lines, it actually shows it going back to the substation. So in terms of congestion, your town has pretty much seen the maximum it's going to get on the infrastructure it currently has. The Bartell substation is basically maxed out at this point with the projects that are on it. Pine Grove also maxed out. We were the third project to submit an application to that specific substation and on our circuit. And that's why we're told we had to reduce our size from 5 to 3.2 because there was 10 megawatts already allocated to it. So these others outside, they don't have as much generation and they also fall outside of your jurisdiction. But I can tell you between Bartell and Pine Grove, there were actually 59 applications that were over 1 megawatt or larger. I'm assuming you probably did not see 59 applications for solar. The reason I bring that up is again, because a lot of these applications go in, they find out that the project's not viable because of cost to interconnect, and they never take it any further. So I know one of the concerns is excessive use of solar or excessive use of land with solar. So I'm articulating this in the hopes that it soothes maybe your concern that by adding another 1 or 2 projects in town, you're going to get flooded by more. Most likely not going to happen because it's not financially viable. Very last slide here. I just want to articulate a few of the benefits to the town. I saw in the last meeting minutes that there was talks of 10% reduction on residents' utility bill. That is something that just about every CDG project can offer. I typically don't tout that as a huge financial benefit because if your utility bill is $100 a month, you're saving $10. So it's not a massive windfall. This project is not very large. But what we can offer with this project is by taking some of this land, 17 acres and change, out of ag exemption, we will be required to pay back up to 5 years of that ag exemption to the town. That gets split between the town, county, and school district. During construction, which usually lasts about 1 year to 2 years, we try to hire local labor and purchase local materials. After construction, there are O&M contracts with snowplow, fence repair, electrical repair, tree and bush maintenance, lawn mowing, things of that nature. The potential tax implications. So currently, the 88 acres that are out there are roughly paying about $4,000 in taxes. If we are able to get a pilot for this project at 3.2 megawatts, just using some very round numbers at $5,000 a megawatt, we would in essence be paying roughly $15,000 on just that 17 to 18 acres. And that would be for a 20 to 30 year period. That pilot would get split with the county, town, and any jurisdictions that are involved. One other benefit that we've done for other towns is called a host community benefit. That goes directly to the town rather than being split with the county and any other taxing jurisdictions. That would go directly to the town. And the last thing that I like to add about these projects is they do not require any additional resources from the town. We're not putting any additional students in the school. There's no additional road maintenance. We're not asking for any support with utilities, sewer, water, electric. It is 100% additional tax revenue. And at such a small acreage of 17 and change, I think the value of that, I think, is seen in the tax dollars that are generated and the lack of resources that you would have to commit or time you'd have to commit to the project. So that's our project in a nutshell. Happy to take any questions, comments, answer anything I can.
Thank you. Mr. Duval.
You mentioned that you don't need to do a lot of planting or, you don't need put in a lot of trees or landscaping. Possibly only on the east side, correct?
Correct. It's set back far enough on the west side that it's over 1,000 feet. The likelihood of anyone seeing it from your standard, 6-foot position, pretty low, especially if the landowner is going to farm that section of it as well. It'll act as a natural buffer.
Let me just say, keep in mind, board members, that right now all we're doing is making a recommendation to the town board for the zone change request. If they're successful in getting a zone change, then it will come back for review, site plan review.
How many panels total?
I believe it's a little over 9,000.
Okay.
And that could change. It's all dependent on the actual wattage of the panels. Every year, the wattage goes from say 450 to 550 to 650. So it can actually reduce and still have the same output. Typically, we're seeing about 100 watt increase every year. So I believe, I can't remember exactly on our site plans what we referenced. It was either 450 or 550. But by next year, that could be up to 650, and we could reduce it by 10 or 15% potentially.
Okay, I'm good for now.
Thank you. Mr. Abbey.
It was a nice presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Very thorough. The part of that proposing putting panels in, what's the condition of the land at this point?
Right now, it's
What
vacant.
Fielded,
It's not actively being farmed. It is vacant fields right now.
it's not forested though.
Not forested, it's completely cleared. And the only real, we don't have to do any tree clearing, which is fantastic. The only real restriction we have is the wetland setbacks.
And you mentioned you were connected with the one on Northern Boulevard,
Say that again?
Pine Grove one?
We're connecting to the Pine Grove substation, yes.
Okay,
So the specific circuit we're connecting to goes down to the Pine Grove substation.
and the one on Northern Boulevard is, does that have batteries?
I'm not familiar with all of the aspects of that project.
Okay.
I know its location,
How about this one then?
no battery storage, no.
Because there's been some issue pop up about fires. You're aware of that?
Yeah, we have heard about that. This is a small project, really doesn't have any financial benefit for battery storage on this small of a project.
And, okay, that's all for now. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder.
I don't know how I feel about another solar thing. You made a presentation at the last planning board. You did hear them say they would listen, but they weren't really in favor of solar.
Town board.
So
Town board,
the
yes.
town board.
Yep.
So I don't know what that really means. So I guess at this point, I have no comment.
Mr. Bloss.
I'm concerned about how this is gonna benefit the town of Cicero. Now, we've talked about the taxes and this, that, and the other thing. As obviously I'm a citizen. Now, when I get my National Grid bill, where's it gonna reflect on that? The delivery charges or how much I used or?
So it's not going to reflect your individual bill. So this is not a community project that gets distributed to everyone. It is a private asset. So in all honesty, the main beneficiary of this is the landowner with a land lease. And then the long-term asset owner, as the owner, we get credits from the utility, and it is our job to in turn sell those credits. One of the options we have and a tool we have in our toolkit is to offer it up to residents in the area. And it's a first come, first served basis, right? We only have 3.25 megawatts to sell. So we can sell that to residents. In all honesty, it is easier to sell it in large chunks to commercial businesses. But we have the opportunity to sell it to local residents if anyone shows an interest. But we could also sell it to a large commercial facility that would apply it to its bill, and then could have the benefit of using green energy towards its facility. So it's not going to go out to each individual resident. Just like having a new business in town is not going to benefit every single resident necessarily. It's going to benefit mainly the people who are leasing the land to them or the employees who work there. So in a similar fashion, it is a privately owned facility, and it's not going to have community-wide benefit in terms of you're going to see a certain percentage reduction. You do have to self-select and choose to participate in it.
And then at the end of 20 years, 25 years, whatever it is, I'm not gonna see it, but how do we know that they can dispose if that's what ultimately ends up that their lifespan is 20 to 25, how many ever years? How do we know that you can dispose of those cells in a safe environmental way?
We hear that question all the time, and in full transparency, there is not a very good recycling program for solar panels right now. Similar to, fast fashion, it's cheaper to go out and buy a new shirt than it is to, sew 2 or 3 together. There just isn't a program out there right now that is focused on dismantling solar panels, and then taking the components and recycling them. What we do see is there are companies out there that will buy solar panels that are at a longer or towards the end of their life cycle, package them up, bring them to a third world country and continue using them. Similar to retreading of a tire, their lifespan is not over. At the end of 20 or 30 years, if they are in good condition and we've maintained them well, they still have a very long life cycle ahead of them. They're very robust, very well built. They withstand hailstorms, all kinds of stuff. So if you have a functioning solar panel, it can be repurposed in a different area. I will tell you that a lot of these projects take 5 to 10 years to get to profitability. So the incentive to take them down is close to zero. If we have a project that's up there for 20, 30 years, we would be stupid to take that down at that point and not continue to operate it, because at that point you're hitting profitability. So if it's continuing to generate energy at a high efficiency, we would keep it in place and continue to use it.
It's almost like we're gonna leave something behind like Allied Chemical did with mercury in the lake.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with that mercury. If you can get it off the bottom of the lake, it's
Sure.
still good.
Sure.
You just got to recycle and use it. But why don't we use mercury in thermometers anymore then?
Yeah, I can say there's no
It's
mercury.
hazardous.
Yep, there's no mercury in these panels.
No,
Um,
we don't know how hazard are those panels going to be at the end of their life expectancy.
That's why a decommissioning plan is in place. So we would sign a contractual agreement with the town board where if for whatever any reason we didn't meet the obligations of operating that facility. A great example that's typically used is if for whatever reason we don't generate electricity for, I think it's 3 to 6 months, and it's not a documented reason, the decommissioning plan can come into place. It is a financial agreement held with the town. There's usually a bond that's in place that we have to show is in place every single year. And that would cover the full decommissioning and restoration of that site, typically with a 2% escalator. So it's going up each year. And that's to protect the town, but also the landowner. For whatever reason, if we couldn't hold up our end of the bargain and operate the facility, that decommissioning bond would be called into action. It would serve to cover the cost to remediate everything and take it off of the site. And that doesn't take into account salvage value. There is a lot of value there in the salvage. But because those are future price expectations that you can't really quantify, we take that out and just do what it would cost to bring that land back to its original state.
No further questions.
Thank you. I'd like to agree with Mr. Abbey. Your presentation was very good. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I think it's, from my perspective, the location of the substations are not terrific. When it leaves you, the only places to be able to develop these solar farms are the locations that we're getting. It's my opinion that this site is better off used for something other than solar. So I would not be in favor of the zone change.
And that's definitely a fair perspective. I would just like to state that at the end of the day, the landowner is the one who's making the decision to partner with us on this. And he has had the opportunity to explore other development options. And at this time, he has not sought those out. So I completely understand that, everyone has a certain desire and look and feel that they want to see certain things in certain places. But at this moment, there is no other proposition for what could be developed there. It is residential and agricultural, so potentially a zone change would be needed for something else. If it is residential growth, that would have to be something the landowner wants to have on his property. And I do know he has expressed an interest in continuing to farm the land. He's been a resident for a long time. I believe his sister lives in the area as well. So what he's expressed to me is that the money generated from the lease would allow him to continue to farm, which he hasn't been able to do in the past.
Understood. He certainly has that right to continue farming it.
Yes. It just hasn't been economically viable for him in more recent years.
I suspect additional offers will be coming forward if this doesn't go through, with Micron going in a mile down the road, 2 miles down the road.
There is potential for that. whether or not he wants to sell his land for that type of development. I will say that what we're proposing is not considered permanent. If you do go with, say, a residential building or something more commercial, you are talking about a permanent facility that cannot be remediated. So this is in essence an opportunity to land bank some land that is farmed. In 30 years, what you'll have is some land that has absolutely no chemicals. It's had a chance to fallow in certain areas, regenerate the soil composition, clean out the watershed. I truly feel that it is more of a land saving opportunity, because in 30 or 40 years, if it's not a viable business at that point, it can be returned to its natural state and could be used for something else. If a facility, manufacturing, residential is placed there, you are going to see permanent structures that, if for whatever reason it doesn't follow through, you are stuck with a facility that you cannot remediate or decommission. So I understand that, people aren't huge on solar. A lot of people say, I like it, just not in my backyard. But I would like to propose that it is almost a land banking business where you could see that field return to agricultural production or used for something else 30 years down the road.
Understood. Steve?
All set.
Yeah. All set. Mark? So at this point, we're ready to make a motion, I would presume?
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to the town board to deny the zone change request,
Maybe I can amplify that.
please.
So you're gonna move for the adoption of a resolution recommending the denial of the proposed zone change application known as New York NYCDG Onondaga 4 LLC, BW Solar Holdings, Inc., 5728 Crabtree Lane, R15 to add commercial solar. The planning board notes in accordance with the recommendation to deny the requested zone change, that the planning board would not recommend approval in order to preserve the character and nature of the land is now protected by R15 and ag designation.
And I'll make that as a form of a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Duval,
Yes to deny.
Mr. Abbey,
Yes, also.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Bloss,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for your time.
We'll move on to the last agenda item. This is for a proposed paint store at 5785 East Circle Drive. Good evening.
Evening, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good. My name is Paul Ruggieri. I'm representing Endurance Properties and Purcell's Paints. We're seeking to repurpose the former Jimmy John's restaurant eatery located off Circle Drive in the Marketplace Plaza into a Purcell's paint store. We are requesting a few minor changes to the site and building. One is signage. I've submitted the shop drawings that we can go through in a minute.
Can you speak a little closer?
Oh,
into
I'm
the-
sorry. I said we're requesting some minor changes. One of those is to change the signage from what was Jimmy John's to Purcell's, with Purcell's logos. And also proposing a minor curb cut at the northwest corner of the property. It's a one-way entrance and exit. And you can see the red line where the existing sign is, and the dark line is where we'd like to modify that curb so that there's better access into the parking area. Currently, I drive a Chevy 1500 pickup truck every time I go visit the site. I'm bumping that curb that exists, that corner just isn't, it's not really negotiable. So we propose to put in a 10-foot radius curb that should be allow for better access into that parking area. And then thirdly, the only other change that I see that we'd like to make to this site is on the opposite corner, would be the southeast corner. We'd like to add a 6-foot wide by 8-foot tall overhead door to facilitate the delivery of supplies from the Bridge Street store that Purcell's currently operates into the new location, the new proposed location. It's basically a use change request. I think pretty simple. 26 existing parking spaces, which I think is more than what we need. It's in and out traffic. It's not come in, sit down. You know, spend a lot of time in the store. It's in and out. Yeah. Lots of contractors and some homeowners. So we got 26 spaces, 2 handicap spaces. No changes to the utilities, parking, stormwater, bathrooms. Hours of operation anticipated to mirror what's going on at the Cicero, at the DeWitt store is 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and 5 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and Sundays in the summer, they'll be open for 4 to 5 hours a day from like 10 to 2 is typical for the store. And there'll be 4 to 5 employees in the store at any given time. Any questions? I mean, that's really.
We'll open up to questions now, Mr. DeVos.
Yeah, I've been to your DeWitt store before. Is it gonna be set up similar to that store?
I've submitted the plans. We partner with Benjamin Moore. Benjamin Moore does the layouts. So it's similar in that you'll have racks of product.
Yeah, that's what I
And,
noticed.
Yeah, it's similar in
Okay.
nature, more open. You know, obviously that store, the existing store has not lots of natural lighting. There's lots of windows and should be a nice space when we're done. More open. We're removing the soffits that currently break up the space inside the building. Those will be gone, so be more open, you know, more pleasant to be in than it was
Okay.
previously.
All right, I'm good.
Mr. Abbey.
Did you say this is going to replace the Bridge Street?
No,
store?
it's not going to replace, just an expansion for
Okay,
Purcell's. What we'll be doing is, we'll be bringing materials in. Bridge Street will receive all the materials, tractor trailer deliveries, and then they'll be delivered out to the satellite store. It's basically an expansion to better facilitate their growing need, Purcell's growing need and market share.
did Jimmy John's have a drive-through?
They do. We didn't see any need to modify it. It's there.
So you
Yeah.
could buy paint with her drive-through if you wanted.
I don't know if we can get the paint can through the window, but with the plans show that we're just gonna wall that off.
Okay.
Leave the existing opening in place as it is, but not to access it from inside the store
In general, it's as it is.
as it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Snyder.
When I was looking at the site, I noticed that we need some paving corrections, additions or whatever, especially on the drive-through side of the building. I take it that will be just automatically done by you guys,
Yeah,
if you get approval.
yeah, whatever needs to be done when we do the curb cut, we
What-
plan on restriping. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by repaving, but we're gonna have equipment there to do work on the parking
Yeah,
area. So
I-
whatever we need to do.
I didn't see it as a total repaving job at all. I just saw some patches that would need to be done on the drive-through side, probably because of the traffic that it used to get.
Sure.
I don't remember when I was looking at the drawings, if we saw something that was like a landscape plan, because it's pretty plain around the building. We try to, when we get a bite of these apples, we try to make them look a little more like they belong to us and they're in the community. Did you give us a landscape drawing?
No, we have a site plan that was submitted by Keplinger and Freeman. We intended to leave the existing landscaping as is, but to your point, most of it faces the plaza. If we need to develop something along I guess it would be the north. And maybe
Well, I know
the south
one of our
facing
members, our
Circle-
Ed Hoc,
Circle
is not
Drive.
here today, otherwise you would hear
Hmm.
definitely
Oh, I was gonna bring it up.
yeah, and we'll try to fill in for. But yeah, I think you need to make a presentation on a landscape change. Addition, I don't think we're saying take out what's there, but what's there isn't much, so.
Along Circle Drive particularly, right?
Yeah.
What are you looking for? I mean, is there a plan that I can refer to?
Not
Just
really.
our choice, or are there certain
Your
plantings
choice
you'd
at this
like us to
point.
say?
Someday we'll have that. but at this point,
Okay, I just like to, it's a simple project for us. And we'd like to get it going. We'd like to open up the store. I'm not here to butt heads. I just want to do what you
Nor are
guys
we.
want me to do. And yeah, I mean, if I had a sense of what you wanted us to put in, I could, maybe get it done at the
Landscape
next meeting.
beautification.
Okay, okay.
I mean, if you look at the area along the road that's, where it says, iron rod.
Yep.
There could be something, in that area. There's obviously room for, well, actually, where I want to have you put some trees, it's not your property, so I
That's
guess
what I was just gonna say. We don't own that. So
Do it at night.
what's that?
Just do it at night.
Yeah. So I guess how do we handle that? Who owns that properties? What's that?
I don't know,
Oh,
but yeah, don't worry about the parts you don't own.
because everything we own is paved except for that small little green parcel. Even that curb cut where we'd like to create that curb cut, we don't own, I don't think.
Or along here.
I'm trying to see where you are. No, I think that dotted line, that iron pipe,
They're
Yeah.
paved. basically
we're paved
all
for,
the property.
so I was
don't
kind
know if they can, yeah, you look at this, you can see that there's. Looks like proposed access to the property on the west side. The way that's flared out and striped.
This,
I don't know if that would ever happen. I don't know if you need that wide of a, if you don't have a drive-through operation there, maybe there's an opportunity to remove some pavement. Along that southern property line and put in, get rid of that. Adjacent access point, so, because I don't know that there's an easement for it. So, there might be an opportunity to remove some of the pavement on the site. You mentioned a restriping plan. When you say restriping it, are you gonna restripe it as it is?
As it is. We intended to restripe it as it is, because our deliveries are gonna come into that back door, which is number 10. So we'd like to be able to put a truck, a panel van there. And park it there without interfering with the customer traffic.
But I guess what I'm saying is there might be an opportunity to remove some pavement on the site.
go with 2 lanes here and then.
Yeah.
Back it up to that.
So along parallel with Circle Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So you can landscape in here. This, you're gonna want to go vinyl, like we talked about already. but-
I heard you. So remove the chain link and install a vinyl. I just prefer it's not white because
That's fine.
it shows a lot of dirt.
I agree.
So, okay. So you're not able to maybe address the curb cut? On the top of the screen, top left corner? See that all?
I like it. I don't know.
Yeah, the current entrance, I mean, we can live with it, but it's not, I don't know how it ever got done like that.
Well, you have to give permission to the property owner.
Who is the property owner?
I don't know. I mean, I think Triland or something used to own this. Was the mall developer, it was the plaza developer, but it just.
Okay. So that would be something that the property owner would have to approve, and then I'd have to come back. It's not something that I need to do to open the store, so I could strike it from my plan for now. It's been an operating store. It's just, it'd be nice to have it a little more convenient. Just for the purposes of us opening the store. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to get approval to change that.
Why don't you see what you can do and then we
Yeah.
can work on it from there.
Okay.
And another, anything else? I jumped in, sorry.
I guess I'm okay.
Mr. Boss.
Is there any chance you could open up next week?
I'd love to, sure. There is a chance.
The paint.
You
This is
can,
my favorite paint store.
it is a great store and it'll be a nice asset to the community. They're a wonderful business. And longstanding.
Over the years, I've had good luck dealing with them.
Yeah. Oh, they're
I
great.
heard they wanted to move a store in there. I said, yes.
Yep.
No, I'm all set.
As am I. Steve?
Thank you.
Just a comment on the entrance, just, you shouldn't have elements on your plan that you don't have control of the land. So you're gonna have to work out something with the property owner. And if you did, that would be maybe in the form of an easement or something like that, that you'd have to show it.
Yep, okay. I naively, I thought that might be a town property. Now I know, for sure. Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Mark, anything additional? Yep. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.
We'll see you soon.
Yep.
That concludes our agenda items. Any discussion or comments from the planning board team? We have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
We have a second.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everybody.